to billionaires and to giant corporations.
Joining me now, Isaac Wright, Democratic strategist and partner with Forward Solutions Strategy Group, and Alex Conant, former communications director for Senator Marco Rubio and partner with Firehouse Strategies. Great to see both of you here tonight.
Good evening.
Good to be here.
Okay, so where do we go with this? Just a reminder, the Tax Policy Center, which is not a right-leaning group, in fact, often accused of leaning to the left, says their analysis, 80% of people are going to get a tax cut, 15% get no change, and so 5% are going to see some kind of increase, and most of them are high earners. Anyway, they broke this down further, Isaac, and said that middle-income families, 90% of them get a cut, 3% stays the same. So why is this so terrible?
So the question is where are the values in the tax cut, right? How much are you seeing people get? And you're seeing 50% of the value of the same tax cut you're talking about going to the wealthiest 1%. The other 99%, and that's just next year.
Why wouldn't they get the most cuts?
And that's just next year. When you look at what it's going to be in 10 years from now, you're going to see corporations who will be getting around 48, 49 billion total in taxes. You're going to see around an $83 billion tax increase on individual taxpayers.
But that's only if they vote not to extend these tax cuts. And that'll be Democrats and Republicans together making the decision.
What they voted to do. They had the option. This Republican majority had the option. What are our priorities? Do we make the corporate tax cuts for corporate shareholders and CEOs permanent, or do we make the tax cuts for working people permanent? And they went with the corporate tax cuts as permanent, and the rest of us are stuck with the temporary trickle-down economic hope.
Well, it's going to be terrible having that 80% middle-class tax cut. Excuse me, 90%.
Right, we're cutting taxes for the vast majority of taxpayers. Some of the people that are seeing tax increases, by the way, are Elizabeth Warren's constituents in high-tax Boston and Massachusetts. Those are the taxpayers that might see a small increase if they're making a lot of money. But the reason that the corporate tax cuts are permanent are so that businesses have the confidence to give out the bonuses, to raise the minimum wage, like we're seeing companies doing all over the country. You might call that trickle down, but that is real money for real people, and I don't know how anyone could be against that.
Let's put a little perspective on it. AT&T announced $1,000 tax cuts for some employees. They laid off 2,000 other employees at the same time, 2 weeks for Christmas.
Cut taxes because it would have been a lot worse if we hadn't, I guess.
Because those people don't have an income to pay taxes on anymore. You're talking about people who literally lost their job from the same corporation you're praising for how generous it is to these workers with its trickle-down
But Isaac, do you think those people's jobs were cut because AT&T got a giant tax cut?
No. But nor do I think
have had something to do with before the tax cut.
Nor do I think that the $1,000 is a fair representation of the tax cut. Look at Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is getting $26 billion in tax cuts, right? If they joined with a $1,000 bonus for employees, that's a fraction. That's a tiny crumb from the table for the working people who actually power America's economy, right? Who wants to be trickled on? Let's share the wealth with everybody at the table who's working to put into this economy, not just shareholders of the richest corporations.
And that's what this tax cut does. As you said, 80% of taxpayers are going to see a tax cut thanks to this.
But that's the problem. That's actually not what it does if you read the math, right? Like if you actually check the math.
This is from the Tax Policy Center that broke down all of the numbers.
Yeah, so let's look at that same report. That literally the same report you're citing is the one that also points out the difference in the tax cut, the trickle-down effect, the fact that middle-class taxpayers are going to get half the value of this tax cut in the first year.
90% of them. So 90% of middle-class houses out there are getting a tax cut. 90% of them.
It's not a complaint they're getting a tax cut. It's a complaint at how little they're getting compared to these giant corporations and CEOs.
Clearly, the people that pay more in taxes are going to be getting a larger tax cut. But people who currently pay no income taxes at all are going to be seeing a higher tax rebate thanks to this tax cut. Virtually everyone in America is going to have more money in their pocket because of this. It's why, for instance, retail stocks are soaring now because Americans are going to have more money to spend at places like Target and Walmart. It's why their stocks are up since we've passed tax reform. Look, giving more Americans more money to spend on their families, giving them more of their hard-earned paychecks to keep, that is good politics. Why Elizabeth Warren would be on TV, why you would be here arguing that this is somehow bad for the country. That's bad economics, but it's also terrible politics. I'm glad to see Elizabeth Warren out there. If that's the Democrats' message going into the midterms, we're going to be just fine.
It's an $83 billion tax hike on working Americans in the next 10 years. That's clear. That's the same report you're citing from the TPC.
That is something that these two parties are going to have to get together and work out.
That's over the course of 10 years. That's collective over the course of 10 years.
But in the meantime, they're going to get higher paychecks and more money back on their tax rebates, and that's a bad thing?
and they're seeing, and they're going to pay more in taxes in the long term. I just don't understand how Republicans can justify. There's a reason why the last Quinnipiac poll said Americans oppose this 2-to-1, because they're going to see their taxes go up over the long term.
90% of the middle class is getting a tax cut. I don't understand. Like somehow these numbers are not
$83 billion tax
When
increase.
Elizabeth Warren talks about wanting to make changes to the tax reform, she's talking about what Isaac's talking about. She wants to raise taxes on people.
That's not true.
Okay, we're going to take this into the commercial. We'll continue that, but in the meantime, we got to take a break here, guys. Thank you very much. All right, you've seen the protest.